rhythm. Yeah. But
Yeah. Okay. Let's just get started, drive right into it. Okay. Um, so this is just a weekly analysis prep for this week. Some possible trades that we could look at and possibly see happening for this trading week. Um, so I'm just gonna go over some setups that I have in mind and some fundamentals as well that we could possibly see coming into play for this week, if not for the rest of the month. All right. Hold on, let me just mute all. All right. A moment. Right. Hopefully everybody can hear me properly, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right. So for this week and as last week, what we saw, let me just get to the calendar here. Sign in real quick. All right, so we just got the economic calendar. Let's just look at last week. So from 30th to the 3rd. So we had some news, well, a lot of news for last week, right? More so focused on the main ones, such as the Canadian. Um, we had interest rate increase for the Canadian dollar, right? This happened on Wednesday, right? So we did get an increase by 0.5 bias points for the Canadian dollar from the central bank, right? But however, if we look at the charts, if we go to USD CAD and we go to this is the USD CAD, and this was the first, right? So somewhere right here, we didn't get much of a movement, right? So that's like right into this area we're looking at, right? We didn't get much of anything really when we did have that interest rate increase, right? And this is about like for all the CAD cross pairs, right? So all of them, we didn't really get that much of a move, right? Which there's a reason for that. One being obviously it was expected for this to happen. So we could argue that, you know, this data was already priced in to possibly happen already, because as you know, the markets are forward thinking. So we had everything adding up to that possible increase in interest rates, which was more or less basically guaranteed, right? And overall, the Canadian economy has been recovering very well, right? In terms of unemployment being low, well, coming lowering, and employment being, well, averaging above, you know, above normal, right? So we do have an overall very strong economy for the Canadian dollar. Um, and how we looking at the markets right now, right? How the markets or how finance, you know, the major movers of the markets right now, how you look at it at this point with all the bearishness, all the sort of very dismal economic outlooks that we do have right now, with, you know, inflation being high, right? The talks of, you know, a possible recession, right, could hit any of these economies at any point of time. When we have something like the Canadian economy being like so well performing, it's kind of underwhelming when we do come to something such as the interest rates and any other thing that's just like related to the overall improvement of the Canadian economy, right? So that's why we had a sort of a lackluster movement when we did have that piece of news, that piece of information coming out that, you know, interest rates actually increased by the 0.5 bias points that we was expected, right? So that's just like how the markets move, right? When it comes to these like fundamental themes, the overall theme overall, right, it's just fears surrounding the market about the possibility of all these negative things that could happen, right? So that's why we had that sort of okay, the Canadian economy doing well, right? So that's what we're expecting at this point. It's not really something to pay too much attention to. If you see, more good numbers, sure, that's great. But overall, you're not going to get the moves that you would usually expect when you do see something such as an interest rate increase, right? So that's like one of the reasons, at least how I summarize one of the reasons why we barely had any movement from the Canadian dollar when we did have that information come out right there for the interest rates itself. Also, we have I believe it was Euro CPI as well. Just scroll up. Right, we also had Euro CPI as well, coming out a little bit more positive, and inflation as well, right? So going into the possible setups that we could see, right? Overall, Canadian economy is still performing very well, right? So we could be more bullish on the Canadian dollar, and that is something that I am going into this week as well, being more bullish on the Canadian dollar. However, looking at the other cross pairs, the cross pairs with the Canadian dollar, it's about how you match it up to really get the most out of the movements, right? Or the best possible yields. So something like probably CAD JPY is something that could give us more of a better yield than if we were looking at AD CAD, or we were looking at maybe NZD CAD or something like that, right? That's NZD CAD, right? So I think at least moving forward, right, the safer bet if you are looking to actually buy into the Canadian dollar, because the economy itself is doing overall very well. Look at the cross pairs such as the yen cross pairs. CAD yen is something that you could possibly potentially get into, right? One thing that I would probably look at, and let me just go into this week, right? Let's get into this week and see what we have for news. In terms of anything high impact related to what we have, the balance of trade for the CAD and the US. We have GDP growth for the yen and business confidence for the AD on Tuesday. Employment change for Q1. All right, so we're expecting an increase on this. So these are something that I'll pay attention to actually for the euro. And I'll say that's why more so and more focus on the euro really and the AUD, right? Because we do have, you can see I highlighted it here, right? The interest rate decision expected to remain the same, as well as we also have on, this is Wednesday, or we also have interest rates, sorry, on Tuesday, right? So for the AUD, right? And this is where I'm looking to possibly get into a buy setup, in favor of the AUD, across pairs such as Euro AUD here, right? So right now, as you can see, as the markets open and we currently, as spreads settle and whatnot, overall, on this chart in particular, right, Euro AUD, if we go to daily, we can see that overall we have this bearishness, right? Overall, we have this bearishness, right? We could say that price pulled back right into above these areas right here. Let me just change the template for this, right? So we can see that price pullback right here, and this is just a pullback at the bigger or the larger time frame, right? And then we could possibly see a continuation moving downward. Excuse me. So overall, the euro itself is very weak against the more risk-on currency pairs such as NZD and the AUD, right? We do have some possible bullishness or bullish sentiment that we could see for the euro, just because we do have that high inflation number, right? So from last year of May, right, into to now, right, the yearly comparison, I think last year was 7.1 or 7.4% in terms of inflation, right? Inflation right now is at 8.1%. So we have high inflation, really not good. But overall, what we could expect to see from central bank is interest rates increase, right? So that's why two important news to pay attention to is one, just the looking at this, the movements that we could possibly see from the AUD once we do get this release right here, right? So we could possibly enter early on this, or I should say I could possibly enter early on this, or wait until that to possibly see a move further down and even a further continuation when we do have interest rates again for the euro, right? Which will be on the Thursday. Now, they say that it's likely to be kept the same. So this will be viewed as a sort of, it will be viewed bearish, and we could possibly see a very drastic move against the euro, right? So we could possibly see heavy euro weakness just because we have high inflation. That is a fact, right? Nobody likes inflation. And of course, their target is to get inflation to like 2% or around that 2% level. Obviously, that's not going to happen anytime soon. So if they do leave interest rate as is without raising it, then I would say, I would argue that that would be very negative for the euro dollar itself, right? Now, they could possibly be doing this because they haven't seen, a recovery in labor markets. Employment numbers and employment numbers aren't where they want it to be. So therefore, they feel at this point it's not really, the best time to increase interest rates. And that doesn't matter to investors. You're not doing it, inflation high. That's what we mostly care about. Your weakness more than likely is something that could happen possibly. So Tuesday and Thursday, right? Possibly a lot of selling we could see possibly happening on something such as the Euro AUD, right? Arguably, we could possibly see this right here tank all the way down, right? And possibly end the week even further below this level here that I marked out, right? It all depends on how investors view the release of these data, right? And if we have the volume and the volatility to continue that movement downwards, right? We're already in a downtrend. We can see that in the higher time frame, the 4-hour as well, right? You can see that this is a level of importance right here. We have this drastic rejection right into this area as well, right? And on the 1-hour, clear as day, nice candle formations, right? So we could possibly tap back into right here, get an entry and a continuation moving downwards. So we could either enter early once we do tap into this region, or we could wait on the release of that first set of news, which is for the AUD. All right, right, for the AUD, which we're expecting a 0.25% increase on the interest rates. And we could see that continuation moving downwards and further movement down. I'm only looking at the Euro AUD really because we already have a bias for that. AUD CAD, and you can see I'm more invested on these AUD cross pairs, right? Just because we do have some fundamental data back in this, and it's a little bit more, I would say, a higher probability of actually playing out rather than, just going with the overall price action on the charts themselves, because price action been kind of shifty, right? This is also a potential trade right here, waiting for price to target into this area or maybe a little bit lower, right? We have some liquidity to possibly head on up, right? So this is also a potential trade that could actually play out. I'm very invested in actually seeing this play out as well. First entry right here and secondary entry once we do get a pass above this level of resistance right here, right? Overall, if we're looking at the chart, we could see we had some downtrendness, right? Price was going down a little bit, we bottomed out right at this area and we started forming, some higher highs and started going up where we started ranging right in between this area. Now, this is more of a tricky, quote unquote, tricky trade because we do have, again, Canadian bullishness overall, right? Still sort of weak in terms of how investors view that information because the Canadian economy has been outperforming, right? And we also pair it against the AUD, which is sort of the risk-on currencies have been more of the movers, right? Commodities and whatnot, right? So this, you could say we do have two strong currencies paired against each other, right? But with the overall price action movements that we are seeing and the possibility of that seeing that interest rate increase, we could see that spike to the upside and then a continuation moving upwards, right? We also have some cat news as well, could possibly come up bearish. I believe it's on Friday, right? So we have employment change and unemployment numbers and stuff like that. So depending on how this set of news come out, we could see a possible drastic move on Friday as well. Again, for that continuation moving upwards, right? So it's all depends on how price comes into this area. If we could get a candle rejection, a wick rejection, sorry, right? Or engulfing a bullish candle close, right? Something like that, we could possibly enter and see a continuation moving upwards. So this is that's the other trade I'm looking at, right? So this is another trade I'm looking at. And these are really just the ones that you see marked in blue are the ones that I'm invested in. 80 USD. Just go to the daily. Right, so this is kind of interesting, especially where the USD is at right now, right? Overall, we had USD weakness, like overall, right? The USD has been a little bit more on the weaker side, as of recent days, last week, and a week before, sort of, right? We did have some USD weakness, but however, overall, how this translates on the chart, you could say that it's a mess, right? At least how I feel it's a mess. Looking at the 1 hour, what I'm looking at is possibly seeing price come back into this area, right? I mark this area as an area of support right here because this is where we saw that drastic move to the upside in favor of the commodity, which is the AUD here, right? And we tapped into this area of resistance where price started rejected from. Overall, we could see this sort of uptrend movement. So it all depends on how price reacts here. I am expecting a possible further move to the downside, right? For price to possibly come back into this area and then see how price reacts into that area and then a continuation move upwards. Overall, for the week, there's nothing really to be talked about in terms of the USD. We do have some news coming out. But you can see it's a little bit more bearish, right? So for the initial jobless claims, the previous was 200K. The consensus is 207K, right? So they just read that, right? And you can see that I say here, right? A higher than expected figure should be seen as negative for the USD, while a lower figure should be seen as positive or bullish for the USD, right? So basically, right? And if you don't know what the jobless claims are, first-time jobless claims have a significant impact on the financial markets, since in contrast to continuous claims data, which monitors the number of people receiving unemployment benefits, first-time jobless claims measure fresh and developing unemployment, right? And we're not going to dive into the macros or anything like that, such as, you know, the general, like the age group population of who's unemployed, anything like that. That doesn't really matter, right? What matters is the overall consensus, the overall number of those jobless claims that we do see, and the continuous jobless claims as well, right? You can see that the number is higher, the consensus is higher, therefore that should be negative for the USD. Now the USD has been a sort of a very tricky, it has a very tricky situation going on with that, right? You know, 1 minute it's bearish, next minute it's a lot of bullishness, and then just when you have like session changes and stuff like that, you just see like temporary USD bullishness, or you may see momentum swinging to the upside just to be corrected by the next 1 hour candle. And it's a complete mess, right? So that's why overall I'm waiting for these two things to happen, right? Usually, you know, the strategy that I use, I would have, you know, summarized that I could have possibly taken a buy right around into this area once we do see a counter rejection from here. And with the overall, if things were normal as, you know, 2019 or before, right? This would have been a possible, had a higher probability of actually playing up price going to the upside, right? But yeah, just given in this weird times right now, I'll wait for more clear moves, such as if price comes down, right? We tap into that zone, interest rates comes out for the AD, higher probability of riding the momentum back to the upside. Again, as well as the USD weakness expectancy coming, we could see a push higher above here. Or if price does actually continue to like reject from this area and start pushing up, a pass above this area of resistance right here would give you a better probability of actually seeing price continue to the upside, right? So that is what I'm waiting on. Really not rushing anything. Right now it's a time of being patient, especially since we're in like summer, right? It's summer, I think, right? So June until September, August, September, the markets would be a little bit slower. Which is something that you just have to get accustomed with as traders, right? So volume might be a little tricky to get a lot of these plays coming out, like especially long-term holding positions, but we'll see how things go, right? So this is another setup I'm possibly would possibly get into, right? That's basically it. Just these little things here as well, right? CAD CHF, looking to possibly see price going to this area right here. If we get solid rejections and a possible continuation moving upwards, I'm a little bit more hesitant on this just because, again, that CAD strength, very, very tricky to say where the market is at with that, right? Strong economy, yes, but how does that translate into the markets? You just don't have like what we're looking for, right? So the yields just questionable when it comes to Canadian dollar as of right now. So yeah, I'm not as sure about of this trade as I would like to be to actually enter it if I see price come into here. Now, if price comes into here and we see a rejection and continuation move, right? Like maybe if we pass this level right here, then yeah, I would possibly enter maybe something like this right here, right? This will be something that I will take, right? If we see a rejection, price comes into here, push up, we got a pass above here, then yeah, a continuation moving upwards would be a like higher probability of actually playing out, right? But for right now, if price taps into this area, yeah, I'm not too certain about taking this. I'd rather not take the L and just wait until I see like, more confirmations for that. All right, CAD strength, yeah, we could possibly see some movements playing out here, right? And yeah, that's about it. This one as well, possible play out, the upside. Again, looking at the high inflation that we do have for the euro, right? It's all about what the data says for the upcoming interest rate decision, right? If they leave it at zero, then we could expect that bearishness to actually play out. If we actually do see some surprise, or like the ECB does decide to raise interest rates, right? And then we could possibly see a drastic movement to the upside as well, right? So it's really a who's who type of situation we are in right now when it comes to these particular currency pairs, right? Anything else I don't really think has like much wood looking at right now, because markets has just been ranging for the most part from a lot of them, right? Unless you're sort of a scalper or something like that, then yeah, this is your type of territory. But for me, not the best possible setups, especially for last week. All right. Yeah, possibly NZD card. Again, however that card strike plays out, who knows, right? But this overall looking like we could see a bearish continuation move, right? If we could get a clear push pass down here and maybe a retest, then yeah, right, it is pointing to be a little bit more of a bearish sentiment, seeing some movement continue to the downside. However, again, not going to really approach this too hastily, right? Wait to see the moves play out, wait to see, some price action, some patterns forming, and then we could possibly, be more assured about where we're going to see the direction of price moving, right? Yeah, and that's basically it, guys. That's basically all that there is to look at right now, at least for me. And when it comes to my setups, again, the only thing that we're watching right now is the Eurostat statistics for unemployment, which is at 6.8% for April 2022. We saw that rise to 8.2, right? So that's where we're at right now from compared to last year, sorry, right? We are 8.2%. Inflation also high as well from the May report that we did get, the flash report that we did get for inflation, which is at 8.1%. And I believe the euro area is something else like 8.4, something like that, right? So high inflation, expected an action from the European Central Bank. So again, the euro, we could possibly see some very heavy bullishness or some very heavy bearishness, right? It's really a who's who. Once we do see that price action formation, then we could get a better understanding of where the market is at, and catch that ride in whichever direction that is, right? Yeah, that's basically it, guys. That's basically it. That's all we have to watch, right? So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. This is recorded, so I'll upload it as well once this is done. But if everybody understand, then yeah. Anybody has any questions? Everybody understand? Anybody want to ask something? We have some time. Yeah, I believe so. Let me just check. Eurobank holiday. Let's see. Holidays. Have your area. All right, so for Monday, just Malta, right? And well, for today, which is Sunday, basically, right? For the euro area, we have multiple places within the European area being having a holiday, basically, right? But we good. Corpus Christi is Wednesday, but other than that, yeah, Wednesday is probably where we might have just some slight volume, nothing much. All right, that's it. Anybody else? Thank you for joining, guys. Yeah, this is very like one of the just very clear, concise what we expected, what we expect to see Zoom that we had. Like there's really not much. Markets has been kind of to be honest for last week and this week, so we'll see. All right, thank you for joining, guys. I hope everybody does have a very eventful and great trading week this week. And if you have any questions, anything, feel free to reach out to me either on Telegram or in Discord. Everybody should have my contact. So yeah, peace.